Hey everybody, welcome to RC with Adam. My name is Adam and this is the Eachine Wizard X220 that we're going to be talking about today. In this video, I thought it would be really fun to go through this quadcopter and see what works and what doesn't, because I've had this quadcopter for like a year and a half or so.
It's just like how it looks in the videos.
This guy right here is the quadcopter that got me into FPV flying, and I got this one based on Stu from UAV Future's recommendation. So thanks, Stu. Anyway, so there have been a lot of videos. I've done several videos about this quadcopter, a lot of videos about unboxings, about flight reviews, about best mods that you can do and that sort of stuff, and those are all great. But I haven't seen many videos about, like, what does the quadcopter look like after you've been flying it a while. You know, what breaks, what doesn't break, and it's mostly stock. I did change a couple things, and we'll talk about that. But it's pretty much just stock parts here. Just recently, this quadcopter has been put out of commission, well, not permanently, I mean semi-permanently, until I get some replacement parts. So I thought, hey, let's talk about that and kind of go through the quadcopter and see which parts are working, which parts are not. We're gonna put ourselves, my set is falling apart. The bat. Without further ado, let's get into it. 3, 2, no, that's what Stu does. Oh wait, the lens palm, that's what flight test does. We will now go to the next sequence of the video. Wow, look at that. It has definitely seen some better days. It's pretty beat up. So let's just start, let's look at each of the components. Let's start with the most obvious, and again, the reason why this thing is not flying right now, which is the motors, or specifically this motor right here. Yeah, see that big old glob of something? I believe that this motor overheated and melted the insulation on the copper windings. It caused the motor to stop working. It didn't actually catch on fire or anything, but let me pull this motor, or let me pull the bell off of here. Man, I really need to invest in a good set of tools for this size. This is actually the first time I saw this side. Ew. So I should probably just mention really quickly that what happened, as I think I have some footage here to show you. I was flying along, everything was super duper dandy, and then it just went into a death spiral, and then kind of crash landed in water, like a, you know, standing water. I've tested it, and everything else seems to be functioning fine. The FPV system is functioning fine. The receiver is functioning. I haven't been able to actually try and fly it because this motor is not working. But anyway, it actually survived the crash pretty well, and the water landing. Let's continue with the motor here. Let's pull this little C clip off of here. Wow, that went all the way across the room. Okay. Now, as far as these motors overheating, or I'm not exactly sure what caused the windings to kind of melt, or the insulation to melt, but I will say that the bearings are not very great on these motors as it comes, and when they get worse over time with crashes and stuff, that's going to cause more friction, and it's going to cause more heat in the motor, which could lead to, you know, bad situations like a motor overheating, which I think might have happened in this case. So there we go. There's the bell. Focus on the bell. There we go. Looks mainly just dirty, I think. Right there. That's not normal. That's not good. It's all like melted and gooey and stuff. And then on the underside, you can see same kind of thing right there. Yuck. Ew. Yeah, so that's not good. So I think that it didn't get black or really like start to burn or anything, but it seems like it just melted the insulation, and it's causing shorts in the windings, and you don't want that because you need all 3 phases. So what'll kind of happen to the motor is it'll like kind of like spin a little bit, but then like stop spinning, and it's being all weird, and the ESC is not liking that either. Yeah, it's getting stuck. It sounded like that ESC was like resetting or something. Seems to be stopping when I so I can turn it slowly, but if I turn it fast, it's like nope,
Or I mean, this motor keeps resetting. Now it's just done. It's getting hot. I think it's...
So this is definitely the worst motor. The other motors are actually doing okay. The bearings are not super great. Pretty bad on this one. They don't sound very good. But they're working okay. But this one's not working at all. And yeah, so the ESC was not liking that. Speaking of the ESC, and let's kind of just see. Let's ESC what's going on here. That was terrible. I know. Little 20 amp ESC 2 to 4 cell BL Heli S. As far as I can tell, the ESCs are pretty good because, like, if you think about it, the most moving part in the entire quad, I mean, the parts that are most likely to fail are going to be moving parts, and the motors are definitely moving parts with the with the bearings and just the whole, well, I mean the actual electronically they're not moving, but you've got the shaft and the magnets and the bearing and all that stuff. So that is probably going to be one of the first things to fail, I think, and kind of was in this particular case. Yeah, the ESC seems fine. It looks like there might be a little bit of corrosion going on from that little dunking that it took. I have not had any problems with them, and they've been kept in pretty good shape. So the antenna here, that's kind of obvious. There's something going on with this guy. This one kind of took a hit, and you can see this little collar is kind of slipped back, and it's actually, I think it's just rotating on that inner coax. But otherwise, it's really not too bad of an antenna. You can see here, well, first of all, I've lost the little top cap popped off, months ago. And then I just put some hot glue on these little, the little actual antenna pieces, the little coil parts. And that really helps a lot to keep it sturdy. So, I mean, not a terrible antenna. I haven't done any like actual antenna tests. This would probably perform not very well, but for what it is, I feel like it's not the worst part of the quadcopter. So as far as the actual VTX video transmitter system here, this actually, well, it sort of broke. I don't know if I'd say that it like failed. You can see that, well, some of the plastic, like this guy, like melted. I'm not sure what part that is. I want to say it's like some sort of, coil of wire. And it looks like it kind of melted that spot, so that's I don't know if that's ideal. This thing does run pretty hot because it's a 200 milliwatt, which I'm not a huge fan of because, like, well, technically you're kind of not supposed to run them, and then also it's just more power than you need most of the time, and it causes more battery drain, and this thing gets really hot. But anyway, you can see here it used to have a little connector right there to connect these wires, but what happened was in a crash, the whole connector piece just came off from where it was soldered. So what I did is I just ended up taking these wires and soldering them directly to the corresponding pads there. So not the super most legit method, but I got it working again, so it works okay. So that's not really a failure on the part of this thing, because it was just a crash, and crazy stuff happens, in a crash. So the VTX is still going strong, but it has taken a little bit of tender love and care to keep it going. And then we have the receiver. This is the FlySky X6B receiver, and I've done some videos about that as well. And it's been fine. I originally had this. I didn't even solder the connection to connect the wires on the receiver, but I decided to go back and solder them and then put some nice heat shrink tubing on there. Haven't had a problem with that. And actually, I don't think I ever had a problem losing connection when it wasn't soldered, but definitely soldering the two wires is definitely, or the 3 wires, soldering them together is definitely the way to go. So while we're talking about the VTX and video system, let's talk about the camera. So the camera, you see this lens is not the stock lens. This actually came off of an old FoPro, as a Picasso, I believe. And I honestly don't know if this lens really helps very much, but I think it might maybe give me a little bit wider field of view. My biggest problem with the stock setup on the Wizard is just the FPV camera lens has such a narrow field of view that it makes it just makes flying so difficult. And so that is probably one of the first upgrades that I would do. Either get a new camera, which would probably cost about $20 to $50, or just get a new lens, which would probably help. I haven't tested that out yet, but I'm pretty sure you could just get a new lens and get a much wider field of view. You still won't have great quality or anything, or any better quality, but you'll get a wider field of view, which is really helpful. You're able to see farther out, and it really helps for turning and stuff. It takes a little bit of getting used to, but it really helps. So look, I mean, this camera, no, it's not very good. It's really not. But is it good enough? Yes, it absolutely is good enough, I think. I'll talk about this on another video, but if you're going to spend, you know, like if you have just got this quad and you want to improve your ability to fly, you know, through the camera, I really think just upgrading the lens might be your best option, because a new lens costs like less than $10, whereas a new camera, especially like, you know, you get like a Runcam, you know, Eagle or something, which actually I really want to get one of those, but those, you know, those are around like $40-50. So for that amount of money, you could like buy a couple batteries or something and fly more. So anyway, that's just what I was thinking there. Now lastly, I guess as far as the electronics go, it's going to be the flight controller and the power distribution board, this little stack right here in the middle. Now, I mean, there's not really much that can go. I mean, it kind of either works or it doesn't work, right? So it's worked just fine. And I haven't had any problems with it. It seems to be working pretty good. This is the SP Racing F3 flight controller. So, you know, it's pretty old. And this is like running the, what is this, the 30x30 stack. I believe it's 30x30, yeah. So it's got the larger board. But you know, and I've found though that I think that's actually really desirable, especially for one of your first quads, to have a larger flight controller board or power distribution board, because if you go with the little 20x20 stack, it can be really hard to solder those little tiny wires into such a small space. So with this one, you get a much larger area, so I like that. So anyway, as far as like durability and stuff, you know, all the connections, well, I don't use most of the connections on here, I guess, but you know, all the connections and stuff on the board, on the stack have stayed in place. No soldered areas have come apart. And I did take off the lights, so I put that one light on there just for just to have as a reference light, but I took all the rest of the lights off, and I either desoldered them or snipped them off here from the board, just FYI, in case you're wondering why it looks like it does. And finally, I guess we have the actual frame itself. So the actual carbon fiber structure upon which everything is mounted, and it's fine, I guess. I mean, I haven't had any issues with it breaking. Now, I don't fly around concrete and stuff like that, and my crashes are usually pretty soft. I really haven't had that many full speed head-on crashes. But so, you know, so it's for my purposes, the frame has held up pretty well. There are a couple things like the standoff. I can't think of which standoff it is right now, but it got kind of bent. Oh, it's that one. See how it's kind of bent? See, that one's going that way and that one's going like that. Yeah, so the standoff got a little bit bent. I think that was probably used to be on the front here. But, you know, better to bend a standoff than smash your camera or you know, break some carbon fiber or something like that. So that's been really pretty good. In summary, I would say that really for what it is, as a budget freestyle / racing quadcopter, I mean, it's performed just fine. You know, for what it is, it's taken a little bit of some DIY work to, you know, keep it running, as far as just a few minor things breaking, and then, you know, finally this motor gave out. But I mean, that's really, you know, to have been flying around for over a year, that's pretty good, you know. And I've actually taken this quadcopter apart and put it in several different kinds of configurations. I've really gotten a lot out of this quadcopter for what it is and for the time that I have had it. If you are thinking about getting a Wizard X220, it probably wouldn't be a bad way to go, because there's a lot of information on it. There's a lot of helpful setup videos and how-to guides and that sort of thing. But I think that since this quadcopter, or at least as this one, I'm not sure if they updated much, if Eachine has updated much since this has been out for a few years. But I think that there are probably some other options that might be better for you, just in terms of the quality or maybe the price. So I don't know. I feel like the Wizard X220 is a pretty good standard to use to kind of measure other budget quadcopters against. But I think you might be able to find something better out there for the money. So anyway, thanks for watching. I hope this was maybe a little bit helpful to you to kind of see just how well this will hold up and some of the issues I've had with it and all that sort of good stuff. If you have questions or comments about your own Wizard X220, maybe parts that broke on yours or how long it's worked for you, leave them in the comments section below. And again, if you have any questions about this or about maybe quad recommendations, leave those in the comments as well, and I or maybe somebody else will be able to help you out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.